Hi everybody, good evening, morning, or afternoon. However this lesson finds you, I hope that you're well. For our learning material today, we're going to have a brief slide presentation instead of a reading chapter. So as we get prepared, take out some device or pen paper to take notes and use the hypothesis annotation tool to share at least one comment, question, thought, idea, response to a classmate. Whatever you feel necessary, just share one comment along the way as we dig into this short lesson. Our lesson for today is tell me, show me, so what? And these are the core structures for building our paragraphs and building our essays. As we get started, let's take a look at the agenda of topics that we can expect during this presentation. So first of all, we're going to jump in by looking at the introduction. This will include your 3-part thesis statement. Then we'll look at the body of the essay, which will be composed of topic sentences, supporting details, and a connection back to the thesis. Finally, the conclusion, which is a place for us to restate our thesis. So as we jump in, let's begin. Please make sure to take notes along the way and share your questions and comments by using the hypothesis to share ideas or to respond to something that another person has shared. So jumping in, we're going to look at the introduction of an essay. We can think of this as the metaphor of setting the roadmap for the essay that you're about to write. The purpose of the introduction is to, first of all, guide your reader through the paper. We're going to do this by firstly introducing a hook that attracts the reader's attention and pulls them into the context for your topic. Some ideas for a hook. Some common ideas are making a surprising statement, sharing a meaningful statistic, or a famous quotation. We might also use a more creative hook, taking a moment to depict a scene from your life or a scene from the real world, using vivid imagery, vivid language. We might also use really creative writing to imagine a possible future that might be looming in the context of your essay. That kind of hook might come later if you're writing an argumentative or persuasive work. After you grab the reader's attention, you're going to give the thesis statement, which is kind of a snapshot of your viewpoint at a glance. So let's dig deeper into what a thesis is all about. So in college level writing, we want to practice a 3-part thesis statement. So rather than thinking of the thesis as one single sentence, it can be more helpful to think of it as 3 layers of ideas that help you develop and build the core of your argument or the core of your topic. So first of all, you want to introduce what is your overall perspective. It's important that in the very beginning of your essay, in the introduction paragraph, that the reader has a clear idea of the purpose and the point of this writing that they're about to read. Next, you want to give an outline or an overview of how you will explore that perspective. So oftentimes we might list or describe the kinds of details, the kinds of examples that we're going to use. What kinds of research are we going to draw upon? How are we going to unpack that overall perspective? And finally, the last ingredient is the larger significance. So why is this perspective important to a larger context? We want to think about how your opinion or your viewpoint might carry a larger impact on society, culture, or politics. We want to think about why this idea that you're sharing is important to some larger context to the world around us. Throughout the course, we're going to develop the skills for composing a thesis statement as we draft and revise more writing assignments, and as we begin to do some reading where we identify someone else's thesis. But these are the core ingredients of the introduction: the hook and the thesis statement. With that out of the way, we want to move on to the body of the essay. The essay body is how you're going to develop your thesis topic by topic. And as we might know, the traditional structure is to use a 5-paragraph essay that has 3 body paragraphs with an introduction and a conclusion. But as we develop and advance our writing skills, we'll find that essays can have any number of paragraphs, just depending on the number of topics that you need in order to fully develop your thesis. So for our first project that we're working on, we might have 2 body paragraphs in a short essay, or if we reach all the way to the maximum word limit, we might have 4 body paragraphs. It really depends on the topics that are needed to really develop and support the thesis that you're introducing. During this lesson, we're going to look at one basic strategy to organize the core ingredients for developing a good paragraph, which is tell me, show me, so what. So let's start with the tell me. Tell me refers to creating the topic sentence claim or statement. And this statement is going to provide the focus for the body paragraph. It's going to help you focus on developing one point of your thesis. Each topic sentence claim is going to connect to the original thesis statement by digging deeper into one aspect of your overall viewpoint. So tell me, we always want to start a paragraph by telling a viewpoint that contributes to your overall thesis. The topic sentence should be a clear, direct statement of your own perspective, your own voice, and your own words. Even when we move on later in the semester to responsive writing, where we respond to textual evidence, the topic sentence of a paragraph should always begin from your point of view. So this topic sentence that develops part 1 of your thesis is going to determine what kinds of supporting details, examples, experience, research materials, etc., that you use to illustrate your tell me claim. So when we talk about supporting details, this is the show me portion of the tell me, show me, so what pattern. These show me details are going to connect to part 2 from your thesis statement. So in the thesis, you give a little bit of a summary, a synopsis, or a roadmap to the kinds of evidence that you're going to draw upon. That means that in each body paragraph, you really need to include that coordinated evidence that you promised up front in the thesis. So show us. Expand your paragraphs with concrete, specific, and focused details. Bring your perspective to life and really communicate the reasoning for why you feel the way you feel, why you believe what you believe, why you have analyzed the things that you have analyzed. A lot of times in the writing process, you'll learn what your perspective is when you explore these details. So as we mentioned in previous learning materials, there is a back and forth process. Writing is a tool not only to express your viewpoint, but to actually develop, explore, and create your viewpoint. And it is through explaining evidence, explaining these details, what they mean and why they're important, is often the first step in articulating what your actual viewpoint really is. So once you've begun to think about what your viewpoint is, how you can illustrate it, we really need to round out the paragraph with the final part of the topic, which is so. The so what part of the tell me, show me, so what pattern is the analytic commentary that links the focused topic of this paragraph, the supporting details of this paragraph, out to some big picture, real world significance for why the reader should care. This part of the paragraph is going to connect back to part 3 from your thesis statement. So you really do need to dig in to the larger importance, to the so what, who cares kind of question, in order for your body paragraphs to truly support and connect to the thesis that you introduced. That means that every single body paragraph needs to conclude by analyzing and evaluating what we as a reader should learn from the evidence and the perspective that you shared. And once again, as we've said before, sometimes you determine that significance through the very process of writing and drafting. You don't always sit down to your laptop knowing exactly why something matters or exactly why you should care about it. It is through the act of writing and thinking that you discover why something is so important. Sometimes we come into the writing process, especially in self-reflection, memoir type writing, which is what we're doing in Project 1, thinking about how higher learning fits into the fabric of our lives, is a very personal discussion. And sometimes we come into this type of topic with a little bit of intuition, a little bit of instinct about why we feel the way we feel. But actually coming through this organized process and this organized pattern of core structures, the tell me topic sentences, the show me supporting details, and the so what analytic commentary, going through those processes is what gives our writing and gives our reflection so much importance and so much significance. That was the body of the essay. Now let's end with the conclusion. We can think of the conclusion as this metaphor of like unpacking from your journey. So we had the roadmap that took us through the process, and now we've come to the end and it's time to unpack. The conclusion will look a lot like the introduction. And the purpose of it is to reflect upon your paper. So remind the readers about what you shared. Reiterate your 3-part thesis statement using a little bit of different language, new terminology that reflects the way that we have grown and developed and deepened our understanding along the way. And then also leave a final remark, a concluding comment that leaves a lasting impression or an inspirational message for the reader. So in the introduction, we had the hook and then the thesis. In the conclusion, we have the thesis and then the closing remark. We really want to encourage the reader to continue thinking about the larger context of your viewpoint from their own point of view. Inspire, empower, activate some sense of interest and prolonged attention from the audience. So as you're writing any essay, you can really pull on this strategy, this 3-part thesis statement of what do I want to express? How am I going to express it? Why is this significant? You can pull on this 3-part strategy of the core structures of a body paragraph. The tell me, show me, and so what components. As you review your notes, looking through your hypothesis annotations, looking through anything that you have jotted down, please use this tool to share questions, thoughts, or reactions. Or if there was anything else, please jump into the Weeds and Roses Q&A to share questions there. Otherwise, it is time to follow up. We're going to apply the concepts from today's lesson as we move from brainstorming into more organized drafting, where we're organizing our core ideas for project number 1 in the shape of a thesis statement and body paragraphs. All right, everybody, thank you so much. As a friendly reminder, I will be coming into the hypothesis Q&A to answer questions or share any additional information as needed. Weekdays between 11 a.m. and 3 p.m. is when you can expect to see a response from me. And another friendly reminder, it's really helpful to begin each learning session by checking back and reviewing the hypothesis annotations from the previous learning session, or checking back and reviewing the Weeds and Roses Q&A discussion space. These are really helpful practices to make sure that we are getting the answers to our questions, getting feedback on our ideas, and not missing out on some of the important ingredients for the learning process in an online asynchronous course. All right, so thank you for your work today, and I will see you in the next one.